Hi, I'm Pete Shaw. I'm the pastor here at Crosswalk, and I welcome you to this viewing of last week's teaching that was offered here at the church. Thanks for tuning in. You know, when I prepare teachings, if I'm the one that's teaching this week, which I usually am, I prayerfully and seriously ask God, what am I supposed to be getting across here this week? As I look through the scriptures, as I do my research, as I try to think about our people and our time in history and what we're dealing with in the world, that's my agenda. You know what's cool though, not only am I surprised sometimes in the ways that I sense God taking me in that preparation experience, but in the after effect of each sermon on both services. I'll get people every week that will come and tell me one or two things that just really nailed them. And they just knew this teaching was for them. And most of the time, I have no idea. I had no idea that was going to affect them in any way, because God's at work in the process. So as you watch the teaching today, I hope that God does that for you too. And here's my slant. I think God wants to do that for you. I think God is active and alive in our world and wants to speak to us and instruct us to help us experience the greatest life possible, not just for ourselves, but so that we can do something in this world to make it a better place. And so I think then the burden is a little bit on us to open up our eyes and our ears to see where God might stretch us. So I hope that happens for you today. And also, if you've been a beneficiary of Crosswalk's ministry, either through watching this teaching or any of our ministries that we do for the community with offering food to people or many other ways that we help locally or in Northern California or around the world through our mission stuff that we do, and if you believe in who we are and our message, I ask you to support us financially. It doesn't take much to make a big difference, but it takes a lot to make this thing happen around here. But if everybody chips in, we can really make some things happen. You need to know, I personally contribute thousands of dollars every year and have since I got here because I believe in this place and I believe in where we're headed. So if you want to continue to help Crosswalk pursue her mission, I invite you to help us out with that. As I say sometimes in church, if you love Crosswalk, love us in your donations. All right, have a great teaching. If I can ever answer any questions, feel free to email me, text me, stop by my office, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Look forward to serving you in any way I can. Thanks a lot. Hey everybody, sorry I can't be with you today. Lynn and I are down with our daughter Lakin in Anaheim. Their marching band is performing at Disneyland this week, and so we don't want to miss that. So we're blowing out of here and having a great time. We're probably riding some cool ride while you're sitting here, so we'll be thinking of you while we're riding Hyperspace Mountain perhaps. Anyway, I think you're going to enjoy today. We've got something special for you. Real quick thanks to Danny Newman for covering both services today in Dar and I's absence. I think this is only the second time in my 16 and a half years where she and I have been gone at the same time. And every time it happens, we're like, can we do this? And the reality is, yeah, Crosswalk's a cool enough church to do this. And Danny's certainly a capable leader. She's going to be our chair of our board of stewards come July. And she's great. So thank you, Danny, for your work with that. Today's service is different. There's no live band today. I've got a couple pieces of music that are going to be part of my teaching presentation today. And I wanted to do that because the subject matter we're talking about is a little bit on the heavy side. It's not going to be dark. I'm going to take you to a happy place eventually. Well, kind of a happy place. Not McDonald's, not Disneyland either. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, we'll get to that in a moment. I want you to relax. I want you to sit back and take you to some deep places. And to set you up for this, there's this book consistently rated in the top 10 fiction books of all time, written by Victor Hugo. The book's title is Les Miserables, or The Miserables, and it has been put to music, which is a fantastic musical. It's been running, I think, somewhere around the world nonstop for 30 years now or so. And the storyline involves a few characters. The main character's name is Jean Valjean, and he is a convict that runs into some trouble, escapes prison, is on the run. I'll talk more about that later, but he comes across this woman named Fantine. And Fantine is a woman who has dreams early in her life of love and children and family and, happily ever after kind of fairy tale thing. But it doesn't go that way. She falls in love. The guy gets her pregnant, leaves. She's on her own with a child. She's living in a place where the landlords are awful, and they keep exacting higher and higher prices from her. Eventually, she sells her teeth and submits to prostitution just to take care of her daughter. It's awful. Story moves on. She finds work with Jean Valjean in a factory. Her daughter is starting to grow up, and she contracts some kind of a disease. We're not exactly sure what, but she's dying, and she knows it. And she sings this incredible song in the musical version called I Dreamed a Dream. And in this, I think everybody's heart breaks a little bit more as we relate to her experience of how sometimes things that we hope will happen in our lives just don't go the way we'd planned. And so I want you to just sit back, and for the next 4 minutes, I'm giving you Anne Hathaway's version. She's a good vocalist for sure. She's not one that would be on Broadway necessarily doing this show. But I love the drama that she captures and the way that the movie version captures her. So sit back and enjoy I Dreamed a Dream.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. Then I was young and unafraid, and dreams were made, used, wasted. There was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come at night, with their voices soft as thunder, as they tear your hope apart, as they turn your dream to shame. Please let the summer by my side. He filled my days with endless wonder. He took my childhood in his stride, but he was gone when autumn came. And still I dream he'll come to me, that we will live the years together. That cannot be, and there are storms we cannot weather. I had a dream my life would be so different from this hell I'm living, so different now from what it seems. Life has killed the dream.
So that's powerful. And as any parent or any person who has loved and lost and experienced grief and pain and just things not going the way they wish they would have, we all relate to that song to certain degrees. And we share her agony to a degree. I'll be talking more about her experience later. I had an experience where things didn't go as planned. And the spring of 2001, 15 years ago about now. It was Holy Week, and I was driving up to Angwin for a musical rehearsal. I was going to be a soloist in a something or other. And on my way back from rehearsal, this is up, Angwin, right? This is Seventh-day Adventist country. And I was new to California, pretty new to Seventh-day Adventists. And on the way back, I thought, you know what? It's kind of late. It's a Sunday night, as I recall, or a Monday night, I don't remember. And I thought to myself, boy, I could use some sugar and some caffeine. So I thought to myself, I'll just go grab a quick Coke somewhere around here, find a 7-Eleven, and head down back to the valley. Little did I know that was going to be a fool's errand on many levels, because you cannot find, unless you're in the inner secret circle of the Seventh-day Adventists, you cannot find a Coke machine or a real Coca-Cola on the hill up there. Now, I've been told by insiders that there is a secret Coke machine that sells actual real Coke, but I don't know if that's true or verified. We'll have to look into that later. But anyway, I digress. So I got in my car, and also having never been to Angwin, just start driving around looking for the closest 7-Eleven. Which, if you've ever been to Angwin, you realize there is no 7-Eleven. There's absolutely nothing in Angwin except for the college and a few houses. And so I didn't know that. It's getting dark. I head down whatever road I'm on. I ended up on my way to Pope Valley. It was dark. It was a little bit rainy out, and I was driving in the middle of nowhere. And I realized pretty quick I was getting nowhere fast. So I turned around, and I was coming back my way up the hill. And this is one of these super windy mountain roads up there. And anyway, long story short, I found myself in an accident. It was a comedy of errors. There was a deer involved. The pavement was a little wet. I wasn't going the speed limit. I wasn't going crazy fast, but I wasn't going the speed limit. I oversteered, and it was just a big mess. And before I knew it, I'd flipped my car and skidded along the pavement for a little while. Even had a beautiful scar on my head where the sunroof had blown out, and my head actually acted as a brake for the car because my head's that hard. And it finally came to a stop, and have a nice scar to prove it on my scalp. Anyway, that all worked out. There's some other cool stories involved with that. 2 nights later, did I mention this was Holy Week in 2001? Maybe I didn't. Anyway, 2 nights later or so, I was conducting here at our church a Maundy Thursday service, which is a communion service. It represents the very first communion that Jesus had. We've done it off and on here throughout the years. And at the end, a lot of people knew that I'd been in this wreck, so a lot of people came to see if I was in fact still alive. And I remember this one woman, who's not a part of our church, came up to me right after the service with an important message. And she looks at me, and I don't know if she meant this for harm or good or what, but she came up to me and just with a real serious face said, God must really be trying to tell you something to have you have that accident. And I was like, thanks. And the first thought I had was, I think there is something to be learned here. Slow down. And if you have the choice between hitting a deer or risking your life, go ahead and hit the deer. It's a good idea. So pretty profound insights there. Well, again, I don't know what's going on there, but I thought to myself, it got me thinking, how is it that some people can think that God would cause an accident like this? And that actually raises lots of questions, because I hear people say crazy things all the time, and they're part of our cultural vernacular. You ever had something happen to you that's kind of weird or bad or whatever? Or maybe you're talking to a friend who's going through a tough spell, I don't know what it might be, and you're talking to them about it, and they say, well, everything happens for a reason. You ever heard that? You ever said that? There's an interesting theological assumption there. The idea is that God is somehow behind this and that there's a meaningfulness to all this. Like God's got some kind of master plan, and in that plan, it's going to include you losing your job, or you getting that diagnosis of cancer, or your relationship breaking up, or me having a car wreck, or whatever, fill in the blank. Is that really how it works? Is that how you understand God being in control? Is every flush of every toilet around the world part of God's overarching master plan? Is that how we need to think about it? I wonder if there's other ways to think about God's will. And when we ask for God's will to be done, I wonder how we should think about that. Because I wonder if there's complexities to it that we don't always fully appreciate. So I want to look to Jesus and get a glimpse. I came across, as I've been teaching through his final week of life for the last several weeks, I wanted to spend time today. This is Palm Sunday that you're seeing this. And rather than talking about the triumphal entry, which we covered weeks ago, I want to take a look at Thursday night. So we're fast forwarding. This is going to be the night where Jesus gets arrested, and he apparently knows that stuff's going down. And so I want to read to you what happens that evening. This comes out of Matthew chapter 26. This is what it says. So then Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane. That literally means olive press. And he said, "Sit here while I go over there to pray." He took Peter and Zebedee's 2 sons, James and John, and he became anguished and distressed. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." You know what he's telling to these 3 guys? He's saying, I am going through it, guys. I really need your support. So hang with me, man. Just be my friends. He went on a little further and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. "Thanks, guys." He'd said to Peter, "Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation, for the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Then Jesus left them a second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So he went to pray a third time, saying the same things again. Did you catch that? 3 times in a row, he's praying the same prayer. And that prayer is, I know what's coming down the pike. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want this to happen. So if there's any way you can keep it from happening, please make sure it doesn't happen, because I don't want to do it. But in the end, your will be done. And I'm on board with that. That's Jesus' prayer. I don't want to do this thing. This is going to be awful. This is going to be terrible. Don't want it. But your will be done. Powerful stuff. Well, then he came to the disciples and said, "Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up, let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here." And at that moment, he is betrayed and arrested, and the show goes on. There are a few things that really fascinate me about this passage in Jesus' prayer, because we know how it ends. He has to drink the cup of suffering. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be a horrible, 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 roughly 36 hours, something like that. It's going to be terrible. What surprises me here? You got a guy here named Jesus who is well known for healing people. This is the guy that from a distance can pray a prayer of healing or resurrection and it gets answered. This is a guy that pretty much whatever he asks for in prayer, it happens. Jesus prays probably like he has never prayed before. There is a level of passion to his prayer. Some of the versions talk about him even sweating drops of blood. He is so worked up about this. I mean, this guy couldn't be more passionate in his prayer. He couldn't be more fervent in his prayer to God, his Father. And so he's praying this prayer 3 times in a row. take care of this, man. I don't want this. This is not what I want. And yet it happens anyway. And so what that tells me a couple things. One, when I see Jesus' agony on this, that gives me a lot of comfort, because there are things that I don't want to go through sometimes too. And it's good to know that our model, the guy who's totally nailing it, he let out his passion. And this doesn't look like the hero warrior, does it? And I think that's a really good thing. This isn't the Mr. Tough guy that's like, of course I'll lay down my life for everybody. This is a real human being who is in agony because he knows what kind of hell he's going to go through. And that means that you and I have the freedom to express that same kind of agony at times. By the way, if you ever read the Psalms, filled with prayers of agony. So this is an okay thing for Jesus to do. It doesn't mean he's wimpy or doesn't care or not courageous or whatever. It means he's real, and it means he's human. So that's pretty powerful. The other thing that's really odd to me, of course, is that the prayer doesn't get answered. I think that's pretty fascinating. And that's actually quite comforting, because sometimes the prayers I pray, they don't get answered the way that I hoped either. And the final thing that I think is interesting is that he keeps ending this thing with "Thy will be done." Now, most of the time, I think, when we think of "Thy will be done," we fast forward to the cross. And we think, okay, well, Jesus is simply talking, "Thy will be done." Well, all right, then I guess I've got to be arrested and I've got to get beat up and all this stuff and falsely accused and beat up a whole lot more. And then it's going to be death on a cross, and then it's going to be resurrection. But we've got to go through a long, agonizing time before that happens. And we immediately go to that place, which raises an interesting question for me, back to my auto accident. Is it possible, just play with me for a moment, I'm not a heretic, I love Jesus, I'm devoted to the Word and all this stuff, but if we just take a distant view of the cross and what it has become, it has become a symbol of what we call the substitutionary atonement. In other words, somebody has died to satisfy a penalty so that God's wrath will be alleviated from all people. That's kind of the gist of it. This is a final sacrifice of a perfect person. That's kind of how it goes. Then certainly over time, as Jesus followers tried to get their brain around what had happened to their master, this guy who so nailed it, there's no way immediately they couldn't figure out, how does this cross fit into anything? And over time, they just looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and saw it more and more as a beautiful expression that at first was a horrific expression. Question I have related to my car accident: is it possible that the substitutionary atonement, even though it became a great and transformed into a great symbol of God's grace, was it really God's will? Just want to mess with you. I'm actually not going to stay here too long on this point. This is just to annoy you all week, really. But is that really his first choice? Think about it. You remember the fig tree thing we looked at for a few weeks? Where Jesus goes up to the fig tree and it's just leafy, no fruit, and he curses it, immediately dies. And, one of the things I was musing about was, well, I wonder if, why didn't Jesus just tell the fruit tree to provide fruit, produce some fruit instead of just being dead, instead of withering? I wonder, the God who is capable of speaking creation to existence, the God who is able to, through Moses' staff being lifted up over the Sea of Reeds or the Red Sea, whichever way you translate it, and it parts so that people can walk on dry land. The God of just innumerable miracles throughout the Bible. Isn't it possible for him to make the cup pass for Jesus? Couldn't the Holy Spirit blow through Jerusalem at that moment so powerfully that the leading priests who really wanted Jesus dead could look at Jesus in a new light and say, oh, we missed it. Hey, everybody, time out. We made a mistake. This guy actually is the Messiah. It's been revealed to us by God, and we're changing our tune. Forgive us for all the stupid things we've done. Let's celebrate Jesus. Isn't it possible that same God could do the same thing with Pilate, who ended up condemning him to the cross? Couldn't the Spirit of God break through this guy who's seeking truth and say to Pilate, hey man, I know that you confessing Christ, as God present, is an act of insurrection. But really, who are you going to trust? The goofball in Rome, or are you going to trust the one that's the real deal right here? God could pull that off, right? So I wonder, when we look at this prayer of Jesus, if there's another way to relate to it. And one way to relate to it, because even though I think this horrible thing was transformed, and we look at it now through eyes of beauty and grace and awe, and we see what it represents in terms of forgiveness and all that. But I wonder if there's a take-home here that we need to just recognize in passing. And that's this. That a lot of times we pray for things that are clearly the will of God, and it doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen because there are just too many variables that are out of our control. And if we really believe that we have choice in life, if we really believe that free will is a real thing and that God's not dictating, it means that some people are going to choose something other than God's will, other than what God would have them do. And so here you have leading priests who have all kinds of very selfish reasons, and probably in their head sacred reasons, to get rid of Jesus. And so they're not, even if the Spirit is blowing, they're not going to listen. And you got Pilate, who probably doesn't want to be in this backwater Jerusalem anyway, and he doesn't give a rip about the Jewish people or their God. And so even if the Spirit were right there in front of his face, even if he was faced with the Son of God right there, I'm not so sure that he'd go for it. I'm not sure that this whole thing would be God's will, so to speak, that way. I think there would have been other ways to communicate the grace of God in ways that we would understand it. But history is riddled with many, many accounts where the will of God certainly didn't happen. And sometimes Christian people have been right in the thick of it, causing the problems that shouldn't have been happening. Colossal kinds of things. And in a way that kind of gives me some comfort, because it helps me identify with Jesus a little bit, and helps me take some solace, that sometimes life just does not go the way we hoped. And we'll pray for a certain thing, and sometimes it's just not going to go the way that we pray. And so then we're left with a different kind of prayer, because Jesus continued to pray, "Thy will be done." And this is where I think we have another level of learning to think about. Thy will be done. What does that mean for a guy who's going to be sold out by one of his inner circle guys for, $6,000 in our currency? He's going to be falsely arrested in a cowardly way in the middle of the night, so there can't be any, big riots or anything. He's going to be falsely tried, so the people who are supposed to be there can't be there, just because of the timing and all that. The accusations are going to be false. It's all trumped up. He's going to be beaten, and then he's going to be dragged around to different government officials. He's going to get beaten again beyond a pulp. He's going to be crucified, which is unthinkable and certainly commonplace at that time, but still horrific. He's going to die. And as he's taking his last breaths, he's going to be insulted by the people who put him there. What does "thy will be done" mean then? I think there's something here for us. As you walk through, and I hope this week you'll take a chance to, or take an opportunity to read the last few chapters of Matthew, or one of the Gospels. Any of the Gospels are going to tell you the last week of his life story. And just watch the character of Jesus. See how he handles himself. Because there's a "thy will" that got done throughout that last week, even while he was being treated incredibly poorly, which I don't think, treating human beings poorly, I don't think that's ever part of God's will. And so here we have Jesus, and through it all, while he is being slapped on the face, he doesn't slap back. While he's being mocked in his trial with the Sanhedrin, He doesn't mock back. Later on, when he gets spit in the face, he doesn't spit back. When he's with Pilate or other Roman officials and has the opportunity to flex his muscles and do something spectacular, he doesn't play their game. When he's beaten to a pulp, he doesn't lash out on insults on anybody else. He keeps his cool. When the soldiers fashion a crown of thorns and they put it on his head, which had to be excruciatingly painful, how does Jesus act? He acts like a noble king. And when he's hanging on that cross and he's looking around, what does he have to say? He looks at his mother and some of the disciples and says, "Guys, take care of my mom." And then as he's experiencing the insults flying at him from these priests who put him there, what are his final words? You know them. "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." See, what I'm saying here is that through this incredibly agonizing experience, Jesus answered the prayer. He was a part of the answer to prayer of "Thy will be done." What was "Thy will be done" in that moment? That he would continue in the way no matter how hard or ugly it got. He was going to go through hell for sure for the next day or so. And as he did, he had the choice to continue walking in the way that had formed him, that had informed him, that he had invited other people to join him on, or he could go the other way. And you know what? This is a choice that you and I make all the time. We have the choice every day of our lives. Which way are we going to go? Are we going to really pray the prayer, "Thy will be done"? It's part of the Lord's Prayer. It's kind of a big one. Are we really going to pray, "Thy will be done," and realize that that means that it's not just about trying to figure out the roadmap where God wants to take us, but while we're on the journey, as we're going through this stuff, we're acting like Jesus. You know, a lot of you are going to go through the valley of the shadow of death, of disease, of divorce, of debt, you name it. Probably a lot of other D words I'm not thinking about right now, but you're going to go through really tough times. And as you go through those tough times, I want you to think about this idea of what does it mean to pray God's will be done for me? Thy will be done. And I want to encourage you that you're going to have some different options on how you're going to face into those things. You can do it the way of Jesus, which is steeped in the way of God, the way of redemption, the way of health, the way of healing. Or you can go the other ways, which are generally self-oriented and self-protection and retaliatory and not very redemptive at all. There's a way that's actually going to be in some way, at least not life-extracting, but maybe even life-giving as you're in the moment, not only to yourself, but other people around you. I mean, just imagine what this was like for the people who are witnessing this. Here's a guy who's known for his healing and known for being an incredible teacher, and he is saying good things as he's going around. He's not lashing out. How does that bend the mind of the people who are there? How does that validate the experience of God in this guy's life? And I wonder for Jesus, how did that actually help the Spirit of God continue to flow and strengthen him in the worst possible moments of his life? I think there's a connection there. I think when we choose to behave in the way of Jesus, which is a choice of "Thy will be done," in the moment with our attitude and behavior, in the minutia that we often don't think about as we're thinking about bigger stroked kind of things, I think there's power there. I think there's power for us. I think there's power for the people around us. And I think there's power in the story going forward. But you know, there's another side to this thing that's just the opposite of what we're looking at that Jesus experienced. And it's a "Thy will be done" kind of a question there too. What if we're not in the valley of the shadow of death? What if we're on the mountaintop? What if we are on top of the world and things are going great for our health? We have relative wealth. Our relationships are healthy. We have stability because of our jobs. We have a certain amount of influence in the world. What if things are going great? What does "Thy will be done" look like then? we're pretty quick to just say, I'm blessed when things are really good. Kind of insinuating, that God has provided these blessings and so we're on top. And sometimes we give ourselves some credit for our hard work in that, and it is a shared thing, I think. But my question is, do we ever continue to pray, Thy will be done, when we're on the mountaintop? When we're on top of the world? What does it mean for us in our wealth to follow in the way of Jesus? Doesn't it mean to be generous? And when we're healthy, doesn't it mean to use what we have in our good health to help those who might not have good health? And in a place of stability, isn't part of the way of Jesus to take advantage of our stability to help people who are not quite as stable, and to use our influence to help people who have no influence? Isn't that part of the way of Jesus? I think it is. Thy will be done may be a little bit more profound and a little bit more deep and a little bit more in the trenches of our everyday living than we've given it credit for. I want you to think about that. Because Jesus' Gethsemane prayer, Thy will be done, he got the prayer answered. Not about the cup of suffering, but he served to answer the prayer of Thy will be done over the next dark chapter of his life. From that moment he got arrested until the moment he rose from the grave. So Fantine did die, and Fantine did die, and before she died, Jean Valjean committed to raise her daughter, Cosette, as his own. What you need to know that's so interesting about that is that's not what you would have expected at the very beginning of the novel. Because at the very beginning of the novel, you discover that Jean Valjean is no saint. In fact, he's a hardened criminal. His crimes were not significant, but he served time, and it was hard prison camp. And in fact, it was so hard that when he had an opportunity to escape, he did. And while he was on the run, he couldn't find anybody that would take him in because they recognized that he was probably on the run. And so he found himself finding a refuge in a priest's home. And the priest gave him food and shelter for the night, a great act of grace. In the middle of the night, however, Jean Valjean woke up and he took the priest's candlesticks that were made of silver, because he could easily sell them for some good cash down the way. So he grabbed the candlesticks and made his way out through the night. The next day, the priest wakes up, recognizes that the candlesticks are gone, and he's deeply disappointed. Then there's a knock at the door. It's the police. They caught Jean Valjean, and he was holding those candlesticks. And so they drag him in because they want the priest to identify him and also identify that these were his missing candlesticks. When the priest sees Jean Valjean knows that he's caught, knows that he's going back to prison, probably for the rest of his life. And it's going to get ugly, if he even survives to get to prison for much of his life. And the priest does a strange thing. I'm kind of Reader's Digesting here, but he looks at Jean Valjean. He says, "Oh, I'm so glad you returned, because you forgot to take the silver place settings as well." And so he goes on and starts handing him more and more silver stuff, saying, "I can't believe you didn't take this as well." And the cops are looking at this like, "What are you doing?" And the cops ask the priest the question, "Are you telling me that you gave this stuff to Jean Valjean?" And the priest was like, "Well, of course. That's exactly what I did. And he was going to use these things to do whatever he was going to do." So the priests leave. And Jean Valjean is standing there in the presence of the priest, who held his life in his hands. That moment radically transformed him. It was a moment of sheer grace. And that grace, which Jean Valjean experienced, completely transformed him from a hardened criminal who is only going to look out for himself to a man of great stature. He became a successful businessman, known for his generosity to his workers. He even became a leading official in his village, and a man of great respect. And when it came time to look after the daughter of the town whore, he was the one to step up and say, "I will take care of her, this little Cosette." as my own daughter. And he did. That's what grace does to us. Jean Valjean experienced what it was like for someone else to fulfill thy will be done toward him. And he turned that around to his future. And he started to live out the answer to the prayer, thy will be done, in his life. As you walk through this week, what valley are you in? What are the challenges that you're facing? Are you on the mountaintop of things are going great, or are you in the pit? Are you on the floor of agony and despair? I want you to think about Jesus this week, and I want you to ask the question, what does it mean when we pray, thy will be done? And are you willing to embrace that is not just on, the major components of the story about what's going to happen and hoping that things go the way that would honor God, but in the moment, how are you willing to follow in the way of Jesus, which is truly redemptive for our own lives and experiencing the power of the Spirit, as well as for those around us? May you be filled with the grace of God, and may you know that there is a way, that there is a will that continues to work in spite of the worst circumstances we can face. And one more song for you. This is a song that Jennifer introduced to us a couple months ago. She sang it last Sunday, and it's called Full Attention by Jeremy Riddle. And as this song plays, I just hope that it'll be a song of prayer for you. You're welcome to sing along to it if you know it. Some of you do by now. And for the second service, the offering will be taken. First service, just kick it on the way out the door. And we appreciate your support, and may you experience God's blessing this week. And may you be more full of anticipation because you chose thy will be done this week as we march toward Easter Sunday a week from now. And I will see you then to celebrate the resurrection. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.
Be true, and may your presence be known.